It's nighttime at an empty high school. A flirty guy takes his shy date up to the gym roof to look at the stars. Just as they're about to kiss, she stops and says she heard something, but all seems quiet. Then, out of nowhere, her face changes. Her skin turns pale and bumpy, and she suddenly has fangs. Before the guy can react, she bites into his neck and monstrously drinks his blood. The scene then shifts to a room where Buffy Summers, a teenage vampire slayer, has a chilling nightmare. She wakes up in panic just as her mom calls her name for breakfast. At her new school, Sunnydale High, Buffy makes friends with Cordelia, one of the school's popular girls. Cordelia seems sweet until they run into Willow, a nerdy redhead girl at the water fountain. Cordelia instantly switches moods and rudely tells Willow to get lost. Buffy looks a little sad but doesn't say anything. Later, she goes to the library to pick up her textbooks. There, she meets Mr. Giles, the school librarian. Right away, he seems to know who she is, and pulls out a big book titled Vampire. Buffy is clearly taken aback and tells him he's got the wrong girl before hurrying away. In the girls' locker room, two students are casually chatting. One of them opens her locker, and a dead body falls out. It's the same guy from the rooftop scene. When Buffy hears about the incident, she heads straight for the crime scene. When checking the body, she finds a bite mark on his neck. Buffy then storms back to the library to talk to Giles. She comes clean to him, telling him she's done with the slaying and only wants a fresh start at the new school. However, Giles reminds her that she's the Slayer, the one chosen to fight vampires and dark forces. Giles further explains that he's a Watcher, and it's his job to guide and train the Slayer. Unbeknownst to them, a student named Xander steps out from behind the bookshelves. He's heard everything and is clearly baffled. Later, Buffy agrees to go out with Cordelia to the Bronze, a club that is allegedly on the bad side of town. On her way there, she senses someone following her. A mysterious guy who goes by the name Angel trails her into an alley but somehow misses her. Suddenly, Buffy drops down from above, flipping off a metal bar and kicking him to the ground. He gets up and tells her they're on the same side and that they both want to stop the vampires. Before walking away, he hands her a small box and warns her about something called. Buffy then finds a silver cross inside the box. At the Bronze, our heroine joins Willow at the bar. Willow admits she gets shy around boys, so Buffy encourages her to be bold and live in the moment. Buffy then notices Giles, creepily, watching her from the upper level of the club. She runs up to scold him for being weird in public. Giles says he's just trying to get her to take her Slayer role more seriously. He then points out that the Bronze is the perfect place for vampires to hunt people. He challenges Buffy to spot one. She casually points to a guy across the room. His outdated 80s look makes it obvious, but when he moves, Buffy's face drops. He's with Willow, who clearly took Buffy's earlier advice about taking chances. Without wasting a second, Buffy grabs her stake and rushes after them. She ends up in an alley but doesn't find Willow or the vampire. Back inside, Willow's friend, Jesse, is trying to flirt his way through the night. He ends up talking to a blonde girl named Darla, the same vampire from the rooftop scene. Meanwhile, deep underground, a terrifying old vampire slowly rises from a pool of blood. He's called the Master, and he looks far less human than the others. Another vampire, Luke, kneels before him and talks about the Harvest, an upcoming event that will help the Master regain his full strength. Luke says he's already sent out minions to find fresh blood, preferably someone young. Above, the vampire is now leading Willow through a cemetery. Meanwhile, Buffy bumps into Xander just outside the Bronze, and he says that he overheard something about vampires. Buffy explains everything to Xander, and together, they set out to find Willow before it's too late. Elsewhere, the vampire who took Willow stops in front of a crypt and tries to sweet-talk her into going inside. When she hesitates, he pushes her in roughly. They're soon joined by Darla and Jesse, who's bleeding from the neck. With their vampire faces revealed, it's clear they're ready to feed. Just then, Buffy bursts in to save the day. The vampires pause, unsure of who she is. But when she quickly takes care of the vampire in the 80s outfit, Willow, Xander, and Jesse use the moment to run. Buffy then attacks Darla, but before she can finish, a huge vampire named Luke grabs her from behind. He tosses her across the room like she weighs nothing. Then he yells at Darla for failing to bring dinner for the Master. He tells her to leave and that he'll deal with Buffy himself. Unfortunately, Xander and his friends are surrounded by more vampires while trying to escape the crypt. Back inside, Buffy tries to stake Luke, but he easily snaps the wooden stake in half. He then throws her hard into a stone coffin and becomes ready to feed on her. Just as he is about to sink his fangs into Buffy's neck, he suddenly screams in pain. Turns out, his hand has touched the silver cross hanging from her necklace, and it burns him. Buffy doesn't waste a second. She escapes from the crypt and races across the graveyard. There, she spots Willow on the ground, struggling as a vampire holds her down. Buffy quickly knocks the vampire away with a swift kick. She then rushes to help Xander, who's being attacked by two more vampires. Together, they fight them off, but soon find that Jesse is missing. The scene then cuts deep underground, where Luke tells the Master that he suspects the girl who fought them is the Slayer. The Master is concerned, If she really is the Slayer, she could ruin his plans to rise that very night. Therefore, they make a plan to make the harvest successful. Instead of draining Jesse's blood, they decide to use him as bait to lure Buffy in. Back at school, Willow shows off her tech skills by hacking into the city's sewer system. They then realize that the crypt may be the entrance to the vampire's lair. Without wasting time, Buffy and Xander head down into the sewers and find Jesse. However, they soon realize they've fallen into a trap and are surrounded by vampires. Jesse leads them to what looks like an escape route, but it's actually a dead end. Xander holds off Jesse, who is now turned into a vampire just long enough for Buffy to throw him into the other vampires. This distraction gives Buffy and Xander time to crawl through a vent and escape into the sunlight. Meanwhile, in the Master's lair, he performs a dark ritual with Luke. He feeds from his own wrist and marks a symbol on Luke's forehead. Luke has now become the vessel, and every person he drains tonight will help the Master get closer to eternal strength. That night, the monsters arrive at the Bronze and create havoc. Luke takes center stage and starts draining blood from young clubgoers. Thankfully, Buffy and her friends arrive at the scene and plan to get everyone out safely. She climbs in through a window and drops a vampire minion from above. Luke smirks and says he'd rather drink Slayer's blood. Our heroine is ready to challenge him and jumps at the vampire while her friends rush in to get people out. After a tough duel, Buffy finally manages to grab a stake and pierce Luke in the chest, killing him instantly. When everything is over, Buffy decides to join the cheerleading team at Sunnydale High, just like she did back in LA. Little does she know that evil is still lurking around her. In a creepy room filled with dolls and dried flowers hanging from the ceiling, a mysterious figure in a robe holds a pendant over a bubbling green pot. The figure then pulls down a cheerleader-shaped voodoo doll from a hook. The scene cuts to the tryouts for the cheerleading team. A student named Amber Grove impresses everyone by balancing on one foot with the other leg raised high. Meanwhile, Willow greets her childhood friend Amy Madison, who is also trying out for the cheerleading team. While Amber continues her performance with an amazingly long routine, Amy tells Buffy and Willow that her mom makes her practice 6 hours every day. But then something strange happens. Smoke starts coming from Amber's pom-poms, and her arms catch fire. Buffy quickly jumps in and smothers the flames with a banner while everyone watches in shock. Back in the library, Giles tells the group that what happened to Amber wasn't caused by vampires, but it's definitely strange. The next day at tryouts, Amy accidentally falls on Cordelia. Later, she shows Buffy her mom's cheerleading trophies and tells her story. Catherine Madison was a star cheerleader who led her team to a championship, became homecoming queen, went through a tough marriage with Amy's unfaithful dad, paid for cosmetology school on her own, raised Amy well, and always stayed in great shape. Buffy tells Amy she doesn't have to be just like her mom, but Amy leaves feeling upset. Willow then shares some stories about when she and Amy used to hang out in middle school. She says Amy's mom, Catherine, is really strict and obsessed with her looks. When Catherine was on a diet, Amy would sneak over to Willow's house to eat brownies. The next day, Cordelia catches Amy in the locker room and warns her that if Amy's mistake costs Cordelia her spot on the squad, she'll make her pay. When the results are announced, Cordelia makes it to the cheerleading team, while Buffy and Amy are placed as first and third alternates. Later, in a dark room with the green bubbling pot, someone prepares another doll, this time with its head covered by a rag. Spooky enough, this doll is meant for Cordelia. The next day at school, Cordelia is seemingly possessed. During driver's ed class, she ends up crashing through the school fence and into traffic, barely missing anyone. Thankfully, Buffy jumps in and pulls her out of the way just before a van nearly hits her. But when she turns to Cordelia, she finds that her eyes are completely white. Back in the library, Giles explains that sudden blindness like this is a classic sign of witchcraft. Buffy points out that all the victims are cheerleaders, so they start to suspect Amy, who is obsessed with cheerleading. They then prepare a potion to detect witches. The group mixes the potion in the biology lab and tests it on Amy. When the solution touches her skin, it turns blue, which is proof that Amy has been using magic. Suddenly, chaos erupts in class as a girl's mouth disappears right before everyone's eyes. Later, Amy gets home and goes straight to her mother. She demands that her mom write her history report and complains about still not being on the cheer team. She then shows off that she has stolen Buffy's bracelet and then heads up to the attic. The next morning, Buffy bursts into the kitchen, acting overly cheerful and silly. At cheer practice, she keeps behaving oddly. When she accidentally throws the cheer captain into a wall, she is removed from the team. Consequently, Amy is taken in by the cheerleading squad. Suddenly, Buffy starts feeling unwell. Willow and Xander take her to Giles, who after inspecting Buffy, realizes that she is under a bloodstone vengeance spell. It makes her feel drunk at first, then slowly destroys her immune system. The witch doesn't just want Buffy off the squad, she wants her dead. Luckily, Giles has found a way to break all the spells, but they need to find the witch's spellbook first. Xander and Willow keep an eye on Amy while Buffy and Giles head to her house to search for the book. At the Madison house, Buffy and Giles confront Catherine, who's sitting on the couch eating brownies, and tell them to leave, but they don't listen and push their way inside. Buffy quickly notices from the brownies and a few strange comments that Catherine is actually Amy. Turns out, her mother switched their bodies. Amy, who is in Catherine's body, explains how her mother used to mistreat her and that she only discovered her powers a few months ago when she woke up in her mom's bed. Even though Amy feels weak, Buffy promises her everything will be okay. After Giles finds the spellbook in the attic, the three head back to school. Meanwhile, the basketball game is going on, and Catherine, who is in Amy's body, is with the cheerleaders in the gym. Giles carries Buffy into the science lab and prepares a potion and starts chanting a spell. As the spell begins to work, Amy and Catherine get brief flashes of each other's thoughts and feelings. This confuses Catherine as Amy, but also warns her about the spell happening in the lab. Willow and Xander try to stop her, but Catherine as Amy uses magic to choke Xander and hit Willow. However, she can't open the locked lab door, so she grabs a fire axe and smashes it down. Just as she raises the axe to attack Buffy, Giles's counterspell kicks in, breaking all the magic. Amy and Catherine are now back in their own bodies. Moments later, Buffy regains her strength and tries to attack Catherine, but she swiftly tackles her down. Using magic, Catherine throws Giles against the wall and turns toward her daughter Amy. She tells her how much she hates her and warns her she'll send her somewhere she can't cause any more problems. Meanwhile, Buffy repositions herself and punches Catherine, which sends her flying across the room. Catherine then fights back with a spell, her eyes turning pitch black as she prepares to strike again. At the last second, Buffy drops a large mirror from above, reflecting Catherine's spell right back at her. With a scream and a flash of purple light, Catherine vanishes in thin air. The next day in science class, Dr. Gregory calls on Buffy to answer a question about insects, but she's unprepared. After class, he encourages Buffy, saying she could do really well if she tried harder, but once he's alone, a mysterious creature attacks him. That night back at the Bronze, Buffy quickly spots Angel, the mysterious guy from before, and goes to him. Noticing she's cold, Angel gives her his leather jacket. Buffy jokes about the scratches on his arm, saying someone must have attacked him with a giant fork. Angel warns her not to let the new danger trap her, and he promises to protect her, but then quickly walks away. The next day, their substitute biology teacher, Natalie French, arrives at school and immediately catches the attention of all the boys. She's especially interested in insects, like the praying mantis. Things quickly turn to horror when Cordelia discovers Dr. Gregory's headless body inside a cafeteria locker. That night, Buffy goes to Weatherly Park, where a homeless man was brutally killed the night before. She's attacked by a vampire with a big fork-like claw instead of a right hand. The police arrive and interrupt the fight, causing the vampire to run away. As Buffy chases him, she sees the vampire sneak up behind Ms. French, but when Ms. French turns and looks at him, the vampire suddenly gets scared and runs off. The next day at school, Buffy is sent to a counselor to help her deal with the death of Dr. Gregory. Because of this, she's late for Ms. French's pop quiz. Buffy watches through the classroom door window and sees Ms. French turn her head all the way around to look at her. After class, Ms. French asks Xander to come over to her house that evening to work on a project. Once he leaves, she eats a sandwich filled with live crickets. Back in the library, Buffy convinces Giles and Willow that Ms. French is actually a praying mantis. They learn that Blaine, the student who worked with Ms. French the day before, hasn't come home. Meanwhile, Xander arrives at Ms. French's house and she welcomes him wearing a revealing dress. She then makes him drink a martini, causing him to pass out in seconds. Weirdly enough, Ms. French reveals her true form by morphing into a huge She-Mantis. Xander later wakes up locked in a cage next to Blaine, who explains that Ms. French mates like a praying mantis, biting off the heads of her partners. Back at the library, the group learns that Ms. French is a She-Mantis who targets virgins for her mating ritual. Concerned, Willow calls Xander's mother and discovers that he never came home. They realize he's in serious danger. Buffy asks Giles to record bat sonar, a sound that can harm the insect's nervous system. She then follows Claw, the vampire with the forehand, down into the sewers since he can sense Ms. French, the She-Mantis. Once they spot the right house, Claw attacks Buffy, but she quickly kills him using a broken fence post. Buffy then breaks through a window just as the She-Mantis is about to mate with Xander. She uses insect repellent to subdue the creature while Giles and Willow rescue Xander and Blaine. However, the creature is only provoked and starts attacking Buffy again. Our heroine then uses bat sonar recording to weaken it and then cuts it into several pieces to completely kill it. The next day, Buffy quietly places Dr. Gregory's broken glasses into his jacket hanging in the classroom closet. She is completely unaware that eggs are attached beneath a shelf and that one of them is starting to hatch. Don't forget to subscribe and drop 1,000 likes or 100 comments if you want the next part.